Hi, and welcome into another video on this channel. So today we will be talking about how we can transform an S3 bucket into SFTP server using Amazon. So let's hop into AWS console and work on that. Alright, so we are logged in into our AWS console, and let's firstly navigate to S3 and let's create ourselves a bucket. Let's call it, as you remember, it needs to be globally unique, so let's call it briefly dev SFTP bucket and maybe some random stuff at the end, and the rest we will leave as is. Alright, so after our bucket is created, let's go to something called Transfer Family, and this will be the fully managed support for SFTP, FTPS, FTP, and AS2. So let's hop here and let's create ourselves a server. So we will create SFTP1 today. The identity provider either can be Service Managed, AWS Directory Service, or Costume Provider. So let's say something like AWS Lambda or API Gateway Endpoint. So we will do a Service Managed today. We will do it for the sake of this lab are publicly accessible, and the costume hostname, we will not be using that, but you can also attach something from Route 53. FIPS enabled, we will not be using it today. It's a thing for encrypting the data while dealing with US and Canada government agencies. So let's click next, and here we will do S3. And let's create ourselves a new log group. The rest of the data let's leave as is. And at the end, let's create server. So right now we have a very basic default server. And now let's navigate to this server, and we will be in need to create a user for that. So let's do add user here, and let's maybe call it briefly. And here we need to attach an IAM role for Amazon S3 access. So we will navigate in our new tab to IAM, and we will create ourselves such role. So let's hop into the roles and let's create a role. We'll do it for an AWS service, and let's here take the transfer and let's click next. And here, for the sake of argument, let's attach S3 full access to not get too much into the details. So we will call it SFTP S3, something like that. And let's create this role. And now let's get back here to add user, and we will take this role SFTP S3, and here the policy, session policy to apply, there can be none, and home directory. So we will take this bucket which we created, and now there can be like home directory, like in Linux, Ubuntu, Windows, or whatever. So we will leave it as, let's say, briefly, and here SSH public key. So we will hop into the console here, and we will generate ourselves a key. So let's do SSH keygen of type, let's say, RSA, and let's do an S3 SFTP, let's call it this way, without the passphrase for today, and we have it here. So if I will do ls, I will see a public here and a private key here. So let's take this public one, and let's take all of it and copy it here. So let's do an add on that, and we have a user in our server. So now let's see how we can go to it. So let's get back to our servers. Here will be our server, and let's try to connect to it. We have an endpoint here. So let's go here and let's try to connect to it. So SFTP -I to take the key. We will do this S3 SFTP key for that, and then the host name and the username. So we will do briefly at this particular host name. So let's do it this way. Finally, we are connected. And now let's do fingerprint yes. We will save it, and we are connected. And let's do just a very basic ls. We don't have anything here, but let's do exit, and let's create a very basic file. So let's do touch test.txt, and here let's write I am file uploaded through SFTP to S3 bucket. Okay, and let's get back to the SFTP. Let's connect it one more time. And now let's do a put operation on test.txt. So we uploaded this text.txt to briefly dev SFTP bucket /briefly/test.txt. We can do an ls here. You can see this file is here. And let's navigate back to the console, and let's navigate to S3 to see if it's actually there. So we have our bucket, and here we have our briefly home directory, and in here, in fact, we have our test.txt that we can open and see. I'm file uploaded through SFTP to S3 bucket. So that's the idea and steps that you would need to take to create a very basic SFTP server on top of S3 bucket in AWS. So that will be all for today. I hope you learned something new, and see ya in another videos.